Welcome to Breaking the Chain, brought to you by Impel Talent. I'm Nathaniel Chapman.
And I'm Terentia Brown. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Breaking the Chain. I'm in the studio today with a guest, Tsebo Koena. We will be talking about the importance of developing emotional intelligence very early on in your career. And as most of you know, this is a topic really close to my heart. So welcome, Tsebo, to our podcast today.
Thank you. And thank you for actually inviting me.
Absolutely. So maybe a quick story how I met Tsebo. We were both actually on a panel with the Civil Engineering Society not so long ago. And he was saying some things that really resonated with me. And I thought, yeah, this is a guy that I want to get onto our podcast and talk about this emotional intelligence, especially in the space of engineering, of technically minded people, as we're always talking about. So this episode today is really around how do we build this emotional intelligence as a foundation for leadership, for growth, that ultimately leads to long-term success. And I'd love for Tsebo to be sharing his own personal story and some of the lessons that he's learned on why emotional intelligence has already been shaping his journey, how it's inspired his style of leadership, and why it's also reinforced his belief of lifting other people as he's rising. So this episode, we've actually called it Lift as You Rise, and how do we invest in emotional intelligence early in your career. So maybe just to open up the floor to you, Tsebo, to just share with our listeners why has this topic of emotional intelligence become so important to you?
So for me, it had to become very important because, as one develops, you need to know yourself as a brand as well. One thing I learned is when I went to the Stellenbosch Business School, part of my course, emotional intelligence was there. Especially for guys like in high school, you never know what you really want to study. Some of us didn't have, let's say, parents who are in the engineering industry to inspire us to become. So, but through, for example, your Myers-Briggs and your 16 personalities, which are free online, you get to understand your personality, your strengths, your weaknesses, and then basically using your strengths, you basically open up bigger opportunities because you basically understand yourself as a brand, as a person. And yeah, that's basically why I always try and invest so much into emotional intelligence.
And you are actually working now as a technical sales engineer / business development, which you said I need to speak about, which is also a very unique combination, right? So you've just joined Hamilton Renewables. Maybe talk to us a little bit how this technical world and this business development sort of world has been colliding together for you.
So it's been a crazy journey. I would like to first start with starting off from a trick. I had this idea of myself either becoming a quantity surveyor, a quantitative analyst, or a civil engineer, right? Like I mentioned earlier, you go through a certain journey trying to figure out, is this really for me or it's not for me? So based on studies, yes, my background is civil engineering, but after doing a lot of emotional intelligence and sitting down and analyzing and seeing actually as much as, yes, I've got a technical background, which I'm actually grateful for because I went from land infrastructure where I'm doing commercial buildings, designing them and doing construction supervision. Then I ended up in water, dealing with wastewater treatment. And to be honest, since high school, chemistry was my weakness, but I ended up in wastewater treatment.
Amazing.
I don't know how I got there. To dealing with bulk pipelines, to doing transport last year and a bit of this year. And now I'm in renewable energies. But one thing I realized over the years is that even through volunteering, like you mentioned, SICES and other committees that I'm part of, that those communities actually shaped me to become a leader, is that I'm a people's person more than just a technical. But if I combine the people's person side of it and with the technical, basically I'm a business developer. And that's basically maybe why I'm here today as a technical sales engineer / business developer. because I'm good at building relationships, but also have a bit of an understanding of how the industry works as well.
And yeah.
So it's a good journey. It's a
Yeah,
long journey.
but it's an interesting one, and
Yeah,
you spoke on and you touched on some very key points, and it starts actually with your self-awareness, right? That's what you said. So just to remind
correct.
everyone,
Yeah,
those four core skills of emotional intelligence start with self-awareness, self-management, and then once you
yeah,
understand yourself, it becomes much easier to then relate to others and connect with others, where the other two core skills are
correct.
social awareness, relationship management. Now, you've brought all of these parts together, but where did the
Yeah,
journey start for you? Where did it click in your mind that this is something that I need to invest in myself? I need to invest time in. I need to understand myself, who I am, what are my strengths, what am I good at, for you to
yeah.
for it to lead to success.
Okay, so it goes back to 2015 when I went to Stellenbosch
Mm-hmm.
Business School, and literally I spent a whole year of doing emotional intelligence because one of the courses was personal
Wow.
mastery, and under personal mastery, we literally read Steve Covey's book like it was the
Yeah.
Bible, going understanding all those 7 habits. And once you start to basically reflect on all those habits, because he speaks about beginning with the end in
Yeah.
mind, and then also having a vision, then thereafter you basically put in the action plans towards your
Yeah.
specific goal. Then the last one, which is basically resharpening
Mm.
yourself. So that means take a break, reflect, kind of just see if I'm going in the right direction. And the journey, like, to be honest, in the beginning, it's not that easy because you quite confused. You don't know where you're going. But a good example is a gentleman called Nzama Baloyi. He spoke at the Vis mining talk, and he spoke about how Google Maps is basically similar to our
Okay.
life. You know where you
Yes.
want to go, but you need to also put in to a specific thing. In this case, let's say Google
Mm.
Maps. It might reroute you because there might be traffic, there might be an accident somewhere, but either way, you're going to end up at the same destination. So, personal mastery for me started in
Mm.
2015. And then since then, almost every 2, 3 years, I try and do at least a 16 personality test just to see where do I stand. And one thing you realize is that a lot of people want to do SWOT analysis for businesses, for
Yeah.
example, but we never do it for
Wow.
ourselves, which is the external
Yes.
locus. We need to focus on internal locus and master that, then the external basically becomes,
Mm.
better. So once you understand yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, what opportunities are there, because that's
Yeah.
external, and what are your threats that you cannot control, and that's why people have anxiety. They want to control the
Mm.
external, and you can't. Like the
Yeah.
weather, it's hot today, it's raining.
Yes.
What you need to do is just basically adjust your attire to say, okay, look, it's a bit cold outside.
Love.
Let me just put a jacket on. So that's how external and internal locus kind of, let's say, basically
Yeah.
works.
And so, just for the listeners, if they're not familiar with the book that you're
Yeah,
referring to, it's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And so, you are
correct,
saying those
correct,
habits you
correct,
are learning from other people. So, taking Stephen Covey as a mentor and looking at what are those 7 habits that I need to be adopting early on in my career, not
correct,
waiting until I'm the CEO of the
correct.
company, but actually starting
No,
from
no,
the
no.
ground up and investing in yourself, understanding what am I good at, what am I not, where are the gaps, where do I want to go? Like you're saying, what is that destination?
Yeah,
Putting it into Google Maps first,
yeah,
understanding for yourself before you can start navigating. That's what I'm doing.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it also goes back to, you basically planting seeds on a daily
Yeah.
basis. And I had this conversation with my partner recently, and she spoke about saying it's about invisible growth,
Mm,
basically. It's like a bamboo tree where basically you
yeah.
planted the seed, but you're watering on a daily basis, but you don't see any, progress.
Yes.
So it's something that you need to do on a daily
Yes.
basis.
Yes. And
Yeah,
the interesting one, and I actually called the episode "Lift as You Rise" because you were talking to us about this book. So maybe tell us more about it because I felt it was so
yeah,
inspiring. And you have been quite inspiring. I think we've spoken quite some time, few times now. And every time I've
Yeah,
spoken to you, you always talk about how can I give to other people? I'm volunteering, I'm impacting others. Maybe can you share a little bit of this, the
exactly.
influence this book has had on you?
So just to give you a background of the book, basically Bonang Mohale, he basically wrote this book called Lift as You Rise. And what happened was I was actually driving one day and then he was speaking and I was like, wow, such a leader.
Yeah.
Who's this? I'm so intrigued by the way he speaks and how basically South Africa or Africa, we need to unite and lift as you rise, basically. But the book, to be honest, the reason why I always like to use that whole
Yeah.
lift as you rise, it also goes back to, let's say, in varsity. There were times where I would struggle with a specific course or topic, let's say transport engineering, but you would reach out to someone who's slightly higher than you, maybe someone in the industry through your network, and you ask those questions and say, look, I'm a bit stuck here, and they kind of make it easier for you. But also, me as a leader, when I was a young leader, what I would do was at CPUT, for those coming after me, let's say I'm in my second year now, what I would try and do is create a folder on Google Drive where I would summarize my notes, and then people basically can add their notes and also use my notes as well. So basically lifting as you rise, the guys coming after you, making sure that you don't leave them alone because um when you get into leadership positions, you are chosen by people because they trust in your values or systems that you have in place that can actually grow a specific thing. Hence, they trust you with that
Yes.
position. But with Lift as You Rise, it goes even further than that. You know, like now that we are 10 years in the industry, you need to go to the high schools as well because we've noticed that there's been a drop in terms of learners wanting to do STEM route, which is science, technology, engineering, and management as well, or
Maths.
medicine, let's say. Maths, sorry, yes. So you want to go back to those areas. For example, as I mentioned like earlier about myself, I didn't have anyone to inspire me to become an engineer. But when we work with other engineers, we say, okay, let's go down to the specific school in this township. Let's speak to the grade 11 learners because that's the year that they really need to make a big decision about where they're going in life, you know? And basically, 5 years later, they'll come back and say, hey, from that day, you actually inspired me. And it's better than having $1 million, to be honest. I
Yeah.
haven't made it yet,
Yeah.
but I've always told myself I think the best thing to do is always at least impact a million people's
Oh,
lives and leave some form of memories in their
yeah.
lives. Yeah.
You are super inspiring. I mean,
Yeah.
for where you are at in your career, and that was something that what really
Yeah.
resonated with me is this concept, because if you look at what you are talking about, it keeps coming back to emotional intelligence. It's,
Yeah.
yes, I understand
Yeah.
myself, but I am also very much aware of what's happening around me. I'm very much aware of the
Correct.
social aspects of what's happening, the impact I can make on the people around me, the relationships I need to build
Yeah.
to impact those people around me. So
Yeah.
this emotional
Yeah.
intelligence feels like it's really truly embedded in yourself. So do you find yourself teaching other people about this topic? Do you call it that, or do you try and break it down into like more simpler forms to explain what it is?
So I tried, maybe it's because I had the opportunity to basically study it and understand it, taught by a
Yes.
professional, right? But when it comes to those, for example, we spoke about
Yes.
lifting as you rise, and someone comes to me and says, I'm
Yeah.
a bit stuck. How can you assist me in terms of
Yeah.
my career? I try and bring it down to their level and also try and also basically put myself in their shoes and say, okay, look, I was also once there, but maybe just have a notebook, write down basically the 5 things or anything. Just have a list of things that you do with energy and volunteeringly. You don't need to get paid. And basically you'll do those notes. Then I say, okay, after that, try the 16 personalities. And then thereafter, they'll put that down and say, actually, all those things I actually enjoy doing, I aligned with basically what 16 personality is saying about
Yes.
me, you know? So yes, I try and get to that level where I actually bring it down to their level for them to basically be able to succeed. And yeah,
Absolutely.
so far so good, I can
Yeah,
say.
but you're
Yeah,
right. It's about telling the story, showing them the connection, because sometimes these concepts may feel very big. It may feel that it's very broad.
yeah,
That's what I find when I'm teaching or I'm coaching people. They're like, we know what the words
yeah,
are, but what does it actually mean?"
yeah.
Right? And then and then for
Exactly,
me, it's
exactly.
always also bringing it back to what's the benefit. So how do you connect developing emotional intelligence to career success? Like how do those two match? If we take an example in your own career, just from you investing in
Yeah.
emotional intelligence, you've seen shift and movement in your career.
So in my career, one thing I realized is that once I understood the whole SWOT analysis about
Mm,
myself, and I know what are my external, which is your opportunities and your
mhm,
threats, basically things I don't have control of. What I would try and do is focus mainly on my strengths
mhm.
and try and invest more in those strengths. Weakness, not too much because I would rather focus on my strengths, which will open up that space, which is my
Yeah.
opportunities. So I realized that, let's say I'm good with networking. So I'd basically just go to almost every networking event and basically connect to so many people that have actually been either my mentors
Mhm.
indirectly or basically me getting jobs over the years or even getting sponsorship for my
Yeah.
studies. So, and not focusing on the weaknesses and the threats, but just mainly focusing on my
So
strengths and just basically trying to improve on those
yes,
strengths. You
yes.
know, a good example is like I realized that I'm more in the strategic side of things. So probably go and link up with people who are like-minded, learn from them, also read about it as well, and you kind of even become more like them. So one thing I've realized, and I always tell people, is that it's all about association. If you surround yourself with engineers, you'll start thinking like an engineer, talking like one, and
Yeah.
walking like one. And I'll bring it back to a practical
Mm,
example. I remember when I joined CPUT that time when I was studying, I'd volunteer on the committees for
mm,
SICE, the engineering, civil engineering voluntary association. And I'll be surrounded by all these engineers with like more than 10, 20 years experience. But over the years, I started to actually now speak like them in like the lingo, using these engineering terms and this and that. So yeah, definitely emotional intelligence and understanding my strengths has actually pushed me to basically where I am today. And I'll continue using it because I'm not sure how far it'll take me, to be honest.
absolutely. Actually,
Yeah,
One of my mentors, he talks about when you play in your strength zone, success will come. And so that's exactly
exactly.
what you're saying.
Yeah,
A lot of people think, oh, it's my
yeah,
strength, so I don't really need to work on it. Actually, it's like if you think about when you
mm,
go to the gym, it's like your muscles, right? If your muscles are already strong, you don't
correct.
just stop exercising it. You
Yeah.
keep exercising it to keep it
No, no,
strong
no.
and make it even stronger. So that's the same
Yeah,
concept when we talk about
yeah,
strengths. You keep exercising it, you keep working at it because it gets stronger and stronger. And that's what you become known for. And that's
yeah.
where the success comes. So love that. Love that.
And like
Yeah.
gym, and like and like gym,
Yeah.
add more weights. If it feels light, add more weights.
Yes.
Go for the challenge. Don't run away from the
Yes,
challenge, you know?
because that's where the growth is coming.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
growth that you were talking about because
Exactly.
you're stretching your
Yeah,
capabilities. You're coming out of the comfort zone.
correct.
So being out of the comfort zone
Yep,
is very uncomfortable, right? So but
yep,
how do you
yep, yeah.
navigate that feeling of being uncomfortable to uh, open up these doors to growth?
In the beginning, it was
Mm-hmm.
nerve-wracking. I never used to be a person who could actually stand in front of people and
Yeah.
speak. Was mainly just a person who would just be in my corner,
Mm-hmm.
study, and then
Yeah.
do my best. And when I started to volunteer for SciC, for example, the student chapter and
Yeah.
CPUT, now I'm the leader. I have to be in front of 100
Wow.
students and basically convince them,
Yeah.
that this specific company is coming. They're going to tell you about the industry or even give you work opportunities when you're done studying or bursaries. But I'm nervous,
Yes.
So I had to create my own punchline just so that at least people start to warm up to me and
Yes.
laugh. So my approach would be, because back then as a student, I used to DJ
Okay.
quite a lot. So I just have this line and say, I'm Tsebo Koena, civil engineering student, but DJ by
Uh-huh.
night. And then everybody would laugh. So over
Yes.
time, whenever I'd have these talks once a month in the auditorium, as soon as I just say civil engineering by day, and then they'll finish it off, and you
Yeah.
know. So how I like to always start conversations is always like trying to break the
Good.
ice. Basically trying to find something that's common that we can
Mm-hmm.
laugh about, and thereafter, basically, my nerves kind of go down and say, "Oh, ish." I was talking to the president of this association, but over time, you actually notice that everybody's human.
So good.
They just happen to have
Yes.
titles. So over time, I had to let go of the whole title thing, but I had to bring it down to say, look, how was the Bafana game yesterday?
Yeah.
And then we'll just talk from there, and then from there it goes into the professional
Yes.
space. So over time, I used to get nervous quite a lot, but over time, I
Yeah.
still do, but just by using some banter there
Yes.
and there, it kind of gets easier and easier.
Yeah,
True.
you're
Yeah,
100% right. It's the practicing. I love what you're saying. Yes, it was uncomfortable. Yes, I was
exactly.
nervous, but I did it anyway. I took the
Yeah,
first step. It took courage. I think that's the big word, right? Like,
exactly.
and Brene
Yeah,
Brown talks about courage comes before confidence, which is exactly what you say. So the more
correct.
you have the courage to try,
100%.
confidence will come, right?
Exactly,
um,
exactly.
and so
100%.
that's what I'm hearing. That courage is coming before confidence, and that's when we talk about emotional intelligence, being able to connect with other people. I'm an
Yeah,
introvert by nature, and it's not always easy. It's something that
yeah,
there's a skill I had to learn. I had to learn, like, what type of questions can I ask when I go to a networking event. I used to
yeah,
prepare for all of that. Now it comes a lot more easily,
exactly,
but back in the day I had to like write down the
exactly.
questions, right? Because my brain would freeze up
True.
when I'm there in front of all the people, because it wasn't
Yeah,
my natural element. It wasn't my natural environment. So that's what I'm hearing you did as well. You pushed
yeah.
yourself outside of that. But would you say mentors supported you along the journey to help you as well?
Definitely. That's
Mm,
number one.
mm.
That's number one. And for me, basically, I would say it starts off with
Mm.
family. Because I recall when I lost my dad at the age of
Wow.
14, then my mom at 17. But the biggest support, right, was from
Yes.
family. Thereafter, as you get into the professional
Yeah.
space, you have these, they're not necessarily like 100% mentors, they could be
Yeah.
indirect mentors, where you just randomly have a call with someone for 30 minutes or have
Yeah.
coffee with them, but you're asking all those questions.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, you have a
Yes.
list, you have a whole diary there
Yes.
with all these
Yes.
questions. And basically, you end up um, learning so much from
Mm.
them. And what they also do is they kind of guide you and show
Yes.
you. And sometimes they might even open up this blind spot that you didn't know. Like, so you actually good at people.
Yeah.
Why don't you maybe go into the people space, which is more the proposal? It's
Yeah.
still engineering, but deal with proposals and business development. They're like, oh, I didn't know that
Yes.
actually. And then you start to develop that skill. So mentors do play a very
Yeah.
crucial role. And there are times where mentors, because they've got their own mentors as well and their
Yeah.
own network, they can open up more channels for you to
Yes.
move. So if you feel stuck, just call somebody, send them a text, have
Mm.
coffee with them. Thereafter, you'll see opportunities start to slowly
Yeah.
open up. And the best example I could give is like, I went from land infrastructure to
Yeah.
water to transport to being here where I am, which is renewable. But it's all just been through connecting with people and asking the right
Amazing.
questions and difficult
Yeah,
questions as well.
exactly. You
Yeah.
spoke about the 7 habits of highly effective people. I'd love for us to maybe talk about some of the habits that you have that has shaped your success
Yeah.
journey? One of the things that I would say is a number one habit, and I try to live by this myself, and this was in a conversation we had. You said to me, and it stuck with me, that you are choosing not to be a victim of
Yeah.
circumstance. What does that
Correct.
mean for you? Can
Correct.
you explain a little bit?
So again, it goes back to those habits you mentioned, and I always like to start with having a
Yes.
vision. So begin with the end
Mm,
in mind. You know what's your end goal. Thereafter, basically, you need to work towards it. And look, we all have different problems and this and that, but that's just temporary,
yeah.
to be honest. You know, the future's always going to look good once you have a positive growth mindset. Basically, opportunities actually do come.
Mm,
And yeah, so for me, number one is basically having a vision. And once you have that vision, dream big, don't think small. Um, Another thing is that we need to travel a little bit more. So step out of your comfort zone, like you mentioned. Travel, go to those places that you would like to be. Like the example I gave about me sitting in a meeting with engineers, so that it can open up that space, that bubble, and then it starts to become bigger and bigger. So it starts with vision, to
yeah.
be honest, and then thereafter take the first step by either
Mm,
studying, asking questions, working towards something. But the first habit is to begin with the
yeah.
end in mind, and then thereafter everything will fall into
Absolutely.
place. Like that Google Maps example I gave,
Yes.
basically. Know your
Yes.
destination, the route. Don't stress too much
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. There will be detours.
It's
Yeah,
not on your
that's
yeah, it's not
guaranteed.
on
The
your
detours
control.
are guaranteed, which is part
I
of the
know.
fun in life.
Yeah,
I'm a engineer that have turned leadership coach, and 10 years ago, I would have laughed at
yeah,
you if you said to me, Terentia, you're going to be a leadership coach. And I'm like, what? I would never have thought that. But you never know where this journey is going to
true,
take you, right? Still connected with technical people,
exactly,
but working in this leadership space. Are there any other habits that
correct.
that's really important for you that is shaping your career success at the moment?
So from Steve Covey, I'd still say the
Mm,
vision. I never
mm,
let go of the vision. Sometimes I go back to my notebooks where I've written
yeah,
down my vision just to remind myself, because there are
yeah,
days where you don't have a
yeah,
good day, and you look back and you're
yeah.
like, hey, this is where I'm going, this is where I came from.
Yes,
It's actually not that bad,
yes,
you know. It might be just a detour, but what did I
yeah,
learn from the
yeah.
detour? You see, so I'll still stick with the
The
vision
vision
part, and then
will
the rest
follow.
basically will,
When we
yeah,
spoke
then everything will fall
perfect.
into place.
When we spoke before, you spoke around continuously sharpening your sword. What does that mean,
Yeah.
and how could that encourage the people listening to you?
So sharpening your sword, for example, for me, I found a new habit. I'll call it a habit
Mm,
or hobby, which is
yes.
golf. So when I do have the chance, I'd basically maybe say on a Saturday or
Hmm.
Sunday, take some time out and play some golf just to relax,
Yeah.
unwind. Or I could go watch a comedy show. I could link up with friends, have a
Mm,
braai, or spend time with
mm,
family. And that's basically you just relaxing, unwinding, and reflecting back on all the stuff that you're doing because you're not robots. You can't be working on a daily
yes.
basis. So sometimes you need to take a break and just unwind. So that's basically sharpening your sword because if you don't sharpen your sword and you're using a blunt sword or axe to chop down a tree, it'll take forever to chop it. But rather just sit down, sharpen it, sharpen it, sharpen it. It could be sharpening your skills or it could just be you relaxing and looking at your vision and strategizing more or changing your
Yeah.
strategy, but you can chop it down quicker
Yeah.
like that by
Yeah.
resharpening your saw.
I
Yeah,
think one of the things that stands out for me, and you said it quite a few times in this episode, is begin with the end in mind. I think if we had to leave with a
yeah,
parting quote for our listeners to take away, I think that would be it because it's such a visual quote. It gives you a picture of where do I where am I
Yeah.
going? Because most times what I found when I'm talking
Yeah.
to, people early in their careers, they say, my company is not doing this, my company is not investing in me, my company is not promoting me, my company or my manager is not doing it. And then I ask them the question, okay, if I had a magic wand and I waved it, and you can have anything, you can go
Yeah.
anywhere and do anything, what would it be? And then they start scratching their head and going, I don't know. So we blaming other
Yeah.
people, but you yourself don't know. So I think that is a very important point for
Exactly.
people to think about, not just early in your career, but throughout the career, because that's shaping,
Yeah.
the destination, shaping that journey to get to the destination, needing to understand what is it that you really
Yeah.
want, because that's really where the internal motivation is coming from. When you know where is it that I'm
True.
going, and then you finding ways of it
Yeah.
happening. So what
Yeah.
would be a closing thought or advice that you would give to people that are early in their careers around emotional intelligence? What would you say to them?
If you're early in your career, like it goes back to what I spoke about, where have a piece of
Mm,
paper, write all the things you've done that you've enjoyed, and basically, even if it's
mhm,
for free, write that down. Have Write down your top 5 values, and then choose your top 3 values. Then you realize that your vision and your values will be aligned, and you always will
yes.
follow those. And then I'd say do a personality test. Like for example, I know myself,
Mm,
ENTJ. I'm more into the business minded type of set because it's seen as a CEO, right? There are other people who might be seen as the teacher, so they might need to be ending up in that space. For example, yourself, you might be the teacher, for example, hence you're teaching and showing people how to do specific things and career growth, etc. But yeah, again, it goes back to that and have a vision, begin with the
mm,
end in mind. Surround yourself with people that you would like to become,
mm,
um, and continuously just sharpen your sword, whether it is studying,
mm,
reading, finding this network of people that you would like to grow with, asking those questions. How did you get there? How can I get there? And also, just a lot of people, like you mentioned, they always get stressed about the journey. But like going back to what you mentioned is that if you had that magic wand, where would you like to be? So it goes back again to the whole Google Maps thing to say, look, plan your destination. You don't just get into a car and say, I want to just
yes.
drive. Where are you driving to?
Yes.
You want to know, I'm going to, let's say, Cape Town. Okay, put it in your GPS. And then from there, ref- get into the car,
Yes.
drive. The car needs petrol, so you need to stop somewhere,
Correct.
fill up. You need to also get refreshments. And that's why I'm using that analogy of a vehicle and a destination. But for me, that would be my parting
Yeah,
words. Yeah.
amazing.
Begin with the end in
Love
mind. Yeah.
that. And for me,
Yeah.
something that has stood out in this conversation, that success is not just about rising, but it's also about lifting others as you rise. Yeah. And investing in them.
Yeah. The collaboration.
Absolutely. Because
Yes.
you are taking people with you on this journey, and you will have all of those people around you as you are rising and building them up. And ultimately, we have a better country, a better
Yeah.
continent, a better world, and we start making that
Correct.
impact one
Exactly.
person at a time. So yeah, just thank you again, Tsebo, for just joining us, sharing some of your wisdom, some of your energy,
Yeah.
some inspiration. We really appreciate that, and to motivate people that are in different stages of their life that can also take away from this, not just from an early career talent perspective.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just thank you. And we
Yeah.
look forward to having you on another episode, hopefully talking about some things on leadership again.
No, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. Like I always like to say, the most expensive thing one can give you is their time. So thank you for giving me your time. We all got 24 hours, but this 1 hour or 30 minutes is always valuable. And thank you for making the time to ask me all these difficult questions.
You did so well, though. You did so well. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always good to engage
Yes.
with you. Thank you,
Thank you,
thank you.
Tsebo. And thank you to all our
Yeah.
listeners for always tuning in. I hope this is an episode that has brought you some motivation to maybe start something, to get off the start line, to really just invest time in yourself. As always, there's always episodes on all our platforms. So please feel free to download and listen. This is here for you to build yourself, to invest in yourself, and learn from other people. So until next time, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us for our latest episode of Breaking the Chain. If you'd like to see more episodes, you can check us out online at www.impeltalent.com/podcast. And if you'd like to perhaps put a question into us or be featured on one of our next episodes, you can email us at info@impeltalent.com. Thank you for tuning in and see you next week.